As we stepped into the grove, the world outside seemed to blur, leaving only the rustle of leaves and the soft crunch of the path beneath our feet. Sunlight filtered through the trees in uneven patches, painting the ground with a gentle mosaic of gold and green. I felt an unexpected thrill, a mixture of anticipation and calm, as if we had stumbled into a hidden corner of the world reserved for quiet revelations. He walked slightly ahead, but not far, letting me take in the space at my own pace. There was a sense of careful guidance in his movement, a gentle assurance that I could explore at my own rhythm while still knowing he was there, nearby. I paused for a moment to watch a cluster of wildflowers swaying in a soft breeze. Their colors were delicate, almost shy, but unmistakably alive. I found myself thinking about how often life hides its quiet wonders behind ordinary facades, waiting for someone willing to notice. He turned to me with that familiar, thoughtful smile. "It's peaceful here, isn't it?" he asked, though I could tell he didn't really need an answer. I nodded, feeling a warmth settle in my chest. "It is," I said, my voice softer than I intended, as if speaking louder might shatter the fragile calm of the grove. There was something about this place that invited honesty, a kind of openness that went beyond words, a space where the heart could quietly speak without fear of judgment. We walked along a narrow path that wound between towering oaks and slender birches. The air smelled faintly of pine and wet soil, grounding me in the present in a way that felt almost miraculous. I realized that in the past few hours, I had felt more alive than I had in months, the small joys of sensory detail, sunlight, scent, texture resonating deeply within me. I glanced at him and noticed the subtle way his eyes caught the light, the way he seemed attuned to the same quiet magic around us. "Do you come here often?" I asked, curiosity slipping into my tone. He paused, hands brushing lightly over the bark of a tree as if to acknowledge its presence. "Not as often as I should," he admitted. "But I've always believed in finding little sanctuaries, places that make you pause and remember who you are." I smiled softly, feeling an unexpected connection in that simple confession. It was rare, I realized, to encounter someone who understood the value of stillness, who could walk beside you without rushing, without seeking to fill the quiet with unnecessary chatter. There was a rhythm to our steps, a harmony in our shared silence, that felt both comforting and revealing. We reached a small clearing where sunlight spilled like liquid gold over a patch of soft grass. He gestured toward it, inviting me to sit, and I obeyed, feeling the cool blades beneath my palms. He settled beside me, and for a while, neither of us spoke. The grove was alive with subtle sounds, a bird calling from above, the faint rustle of leaves, the distant hum of life beyond the trees. In that stillness, I felt the steady pulse of his presence, an unspoken reassurance that he was fully engaged in the moment with me. Eventually, conversation returned in gentle, meandering strands. We spoke of things that seemed ordinary but felt profound in their simplicity, books we had recently read, memories of childhood places that lingered in our minds, small regrets and fleeting joys. There was no hurry, no urgency, only the pleasure of being fully present and recognized. I found myself sharing details I normally kept tucked away, and he listened with a quiet attentiveness that made me feel valued, understood, and safe. At one point, he asked me about the dreams I had let slip away over the years. It was a question that caught me off guard, but I answered anyway, revealing ambitions and hopes I had thought were long buried. He listened carefully, not interrupting, not offering empty platitudes, simply acknowledging my words with a gentle nod and occasional thoughtful pause. The act of being heard in such a deliberate, attentive way brought an unexpected lump to my throat. Time seemed to shift in the grove. The sun climbed higher, then tilted toward afternoon, casting long shadows that danced across the grass. I realized that hours had passed without either of us noticing, absorbed completely in the rhythm of walking, sitting, and talking. And yet, it was more than just the passage of time. It was the depth of engagement, the way moments stretched to accommodate reflection, understanding, and the quiet thrill of shared discovery. He pointed toward a small, wooden bridge over a narrow stream, its surface glinting with the reflection of sunlight and leaves. "Shall we?" he asked, a subtle invitation that carried both playfulness and respect. I followed him across, feeling the gentle sway of the bridge beneath our feet. The water below flowed steadily, quietly, almost like a heartbeat echoing through the grove. I realized that our steps, like the stream, were moving forward together, steady and deliberate, carrying us toward something we could not yet see on the other side, The grove opened into a shaded path lined with ferns and moss. The air was cooler here, heavier with the scent of earth and growth. We walked slowly, letting the path guide us, and I noticed the small details, the pattern of moss on stones, the occasional flutter of a bird through the canopy, the soft hum of life in every corner. Each moment felt like an intimate exchange with the world, amplified by the shared experience of exploring it together. By the time we emerged from the grove back into the familiar streets of our neighborhood, I felt a sense of quiet transformation. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but undeniable, a deepened awareness of connection, a recognition of the value of attentiveness, and the thrill of having discovered something hidden yet profoundly meaningful. As we paused at the corner near my house, I realized that the walk he had promised was no ordinary stroll. It had been a journey through reflection, trust, and the quiet thrill of shared discovery. I looked at him and saw the same understanding mirrored in his eyes. And in that simple glance, I knew that our story was far from over. This was only the beginning of a connection that would continue to shape the days, the memories, and the subtle joys we carried forward. The walk had begun as a casual invitation, and yet it had become a revelation, a gentle unfolding of emotion, presence, and unspoken understanding that would linger in my mind long after the sun had set and the shadows had returned to the quiet corners of the streets. Don't forget to like the video, share your thoughts or story in the comments, and subscribe to our latest stories. Before I start, tell me where you are watching me from. I wonder which cities and towns will join me in this memory that will follow me for years. He told me it would just be a walk. That's what he said when I answered the phone that morning, my voice still heavy with sleep, hair sticking up in wild tufts from restless dreams. I didn't think much of it at first. He had always been a man of simple pleasures, a person who found comfort in quiet routines and the familiar rhythm of the day. A walk, he said, just a walk, but as I slipped my feet into my worn leather shoes and stepped outside, I felt a flutter of anticipation that I couldn't quite explain. The morning air was crisp, carrying the scent of damp leaves and distant earth. Our neighborhood was just beginning to stir. A few cars hummed along the street, and the faint sound of a dog barking somewhere down the block reached us as we walked side by side. I glanced at him, noticing the way his eyes caught the light through the mist, a soft glint that seemed to hold a question I wasn't ready to answer. There was a gentle pause in our steps, the kind that doesn't demand words, yet it somehow said everything. We moved toward the park, a place I had frequented alone countless times, always with a book in hand or a notebook to jot down thoughts that seemed too big to carry silently. But today, walking with him, the familiar paths felt different. They felt alive. The trees stretched high above, their branches forming intricate patterns that danced in the sunlight filtering through the leaves. Every leaf shimmered in its own way, as if acknowledging our presence, as if marking this morning as something unusual, something worth remembering. I realized halfway through our walk that I had been holding my breath without knowing it. There was a rhythm to our steps that was both comforting and unnerving. He spoke little, letting silence fill the spaces between us, but even in his quiet, there was communication. The tilt of his head, the occasional glances toward the horizon, the slight curve of his lips when a breeze stirred the branches above us, all of it seemed carefully observed, and I found myself matching his attention to detail. Every small motion became significant, every pause a question waiting to be answered. We reached a bench by the pond, the water smooth and reflective, mirroring the morning sky in soft blues and pale golds. Ducks glided across the surface, leaving gentle ripples in their wake, and I felt a strange sense of calm settle over me. He sat down slowly, a sigh escaping him that seemed heavier than the morning air. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" he asked, though it wasn't really a question. I nodded, words unnecessary for a moment, and then he spoke about something I hadn't expected: memories, fleeting yet vivid, of his childhood spent near lakes and fields, of small adventures that had seemed insignificant at the time but had shaped the man he was today. He told me these stories with a tenderness I hadn't anticipated, and as I listened, I realized the weight of the life he had carried quietly, the quiet struggles and small victories that defined him more than any grand achievement could. I found myself sharing, too, hesitant at first, stumbling over words that felt too personal to voice. But his presence was steady, encouraging without pushing, allowing the story of my own life to spill gently into the open air. I spoke of times I had doubted myself, of friendships that had withered, of dreams deferred, and of moments of quiet triumph no one else had noticed. He listened, not interrupting, only offering a gentle smile or a nod, and in that simple acknowledgement, I felt seen in a way that surprised me. The sun climbed higher, warming the cool air, and shadows shifted across the ground. At some point, our hands brushed lightly, a fleeting touch that sent a small, unexpected warmth through me. Neither of us pulled away immediately. There was no rush, no need for explanation. The walk, he had said, was simple, and yet it had become a shared journey, not just through the streets or the park, but through our thoughts, memories, and emotions. By the time we decided to move again, I felt a sense of quiet anticipation, a gentle tug at the corners of my mind, suggesting that this was only the beginning. We walked along the edge of the pond, watching the water glint with sun and sky, and I realized how rare it was to find someone who could hold space for you without judgment, who could listen and reflect and allow you to simply exist beside them. It was a realization that felt both comforting and unsettling, the kind that nudges you toward change before you're ready to accept it. As we made our way back through the tree-lined path, leaves crunching softly beneath our shoes, I noticed the ordinary beauty of the moment, the subtle play of light on bark, the faint laughter of children far off in the distance, the way the wind carried the scent of earth and growth. It was as if the world had paused for a brief, fleeting instant just for us, allowing me to witness something profound without fanfare or expectation. And then he said, almost casually, "I thought you might like this." I looked at him, puzzled, and he gestured toward a small, hidden grove tucked between the trees, a place I had never noticed before despite years of visiting this park. A delicate path, dappled with sunlight, wound its way into the quiet space, promising something new, something unknown. I felt a surge of curiosity, and perhaps a bit of apprehension, but mostly a profound sense of trust. That's when I realized, the walk was never about the park, the pond, or even the sunlit paths. It was about the unexpected turns, the small gestures, and the discovery of connection in a world that often moved too fast to notice such things. And as we stepped into the grove together, I understood that this morning would linger with me, a memory etched softly into my mind, shaping how I viewed the simple, extraordinary moments that life occasionally offers. The walk had started simply, with a few words, a casual invitation, and yet it had opened a door I hadn't even known was there, a door to quiet reflection, trust, and an unspoken promise of shared experience that neither of us could have predicted. I didn't know what lay ahead in the path before us, but I knew that I wanted to walk it with him, one step at a time, carrying the morning's revelations in my heart. As the days passed after our walk through the grove, I found myself replaying the morning in my mind, over and over, like a melody I couldn't quite forget. I would catch a glimpse of sunlight on a window or hear the soft rustle of leaves outside and feel that same quiet thrill, that sense of anticipation, of having glimpsed something both fragile and profound. It wasn't just the memory of the walk itself, but the way it had shifted something inside me, a small, almost imperceptible reordering of how I viewed the ordinary moments of life. He called one evening, his voice carrying the same gentle warmth that had drawn me in during the walk. "I thought you might like to see the river," he said, and I could hear the faint smile in his tone. There was a hint of playfulness, but also a steadiness that reassured me. "Just a short walk," he added, and I laughed softly, knowing better than to take the words at face value. I agreed, of course, drawn by the promise of shared discovery, curiosity mingled with the quiet trust that had begun to grow between us. We met at the edge of town as twilight began to settle, the sky painted in shades of purple and amber. The air was cooler now, carrying the earthy scent of late summer and the faint sweetness of wildflowers lingering along the roadside. We walked side by side, our conversation starting lightly, remarks about the fading light, the slow hum of evening insects, but gradually it deepened into something more thoughtful, more revealing. He spoke of his family, of moments he had wished he could relive, and of mistakes that had taught him more than triumphs ever could. I listened, feeling a quiet admiration for his honesty, and found myself opening up in turn, sharing stories I rarely voiced aloud. We spoke of fears and longings, of moments of doubt, and of times when we had felt invisible in the world, each word building a bridge between us. The river appeared suddenly around a bend, its surface catching the last glow of sunlight and turning it into liquid fire. The sight took my breath away. He stopped and gestured toward the water. "It's been a long time since I stood here," he said quietly, almost to himself. I followed his gaze, and in that shared silence, I felt the weight of memory and time, The sense that we had stumbled into a place that carried more than just natural beauty. It held fragments of lives lived, lessons learned, moments of quiet reflection accumulated like sediment along the riverbed. We wandered along the bank, stepping carefully over roots and rocks, the gentle murmur of the river accompanying our footsteps. Occasionally, he would pause to point out something small, a dragonfly skimming the water's surface, a fallen leaf caught in a swirl of current, and I realized that he noticed details that often escaped me. There was a mindfulness in his observation, a way of seeing that made even the ordinary feel extraordinary, and I found myself matching his attentiveness, noticing things I had overlooked for years. At one point, the river widened, forming a shallow pool where the current slowed. He motioned toward it and suggested we sit for a while. I sank onto a smooth, sun-warmed stone, feeling the coolness of the water just beyond my fingertips. We sat in companionable silence for some time, watching the ripples, the way the light shifted across the surface, and I felt a sense of serenity I hadn't known I was capable of. You know, he said softly after a while, these walks, they remind me that life isn't just about the big moments. It's about noticing, about pausing, about sharing even the simplest things with someone who understands. I nodded, a lump rising in my throat. His words struck a chord deep within me. It was a reminder that connection doesn't always come in grand gestures. Sometimes it comes quietly, in a shared glance, a gentle word, or the simple act of walking beside someone who truly sees you. As dusk began to deepen into night, the river reflecting the fading light in soft, muted tones, I noticed how easy it had become to trust him, how natural it felt to lean into the space he offered without fear of intrusion. I realized that these walks were no longer just about discovery, they were about growth, about allowing oneself to feel deeply, to open to experiences that might otherwise pass unnoticed. We eventually rose and continued along the path, the sounds of the evening wrapping around us like a gentle embrace. Fireflies began to appear, their tiny lights blinking in the gathering darkness, and I felt a quiet wonder at the world's ability to surprise, to create beauty even in fleeting moments. On the way back, he paused on a small wooden bridge, looking down at the water and then at me. I wanted to show you this, he said simply, and I understood that it wasn't about the bridge, the river, or even the fireflies. It was about the intention behind it, the careful thought, the desire to share something meaningful. I looked at him, realizing that the walk had brought us closer in ways neither of us had expected. There was a subtle shift in the air between us, a recognition of mutual respect, shared curiosity, and the quiet thrill of having discovered something beyond the ordinary together. The memory of this evening, the glow of the fading light, and the soft murmur of the river would linger in my mind, a testament to the beauty of shared experiences and the emotional depth that even the simplest moments can hold. As we walked back toward the edge of town, I felt a profound sense of gratitude not only for the day, for the river, for the hidden corners of the world, but for him, for the presence he had brought into my life, for the gentle ways he had guided me toward noticing the richness of the world and the value of allowing oneself to feel. I knew, without needing to speak it aloud, that this was only the beginning of a deeper journey, one that would continue to shape my heart and mind in ways I could not yet fully grasp. The days that followed felt different, though nothing in the world had changed. The streets were the same, the sun rose and set as usual, yet I carried a new awareness inside me, a quiet sense that life had subtly shifted. Our walks, which had begun as casual invitations, had become markers of something deeper, moments where time seemed to stretch, where silence spoke as loudly as words, and where trust and understanding grew between us in ways I had never anticipated. One afternoon, he suggested we visit a nearby hill that overlooked the town. It's not far, he said, smiling that same gentle smile that had become so familiar. I knew better than to take the words lightly. There was always more to these walks than met the eye, and I welcomed the uncertainty with a mixture of curiosity and calm excitement. The path up the hill was narrow and winding, bordered by wild grasses that brushed against my arms as we walked. The air was warm and dry, carrying the faint scent of late summer blooms and sun-baked earth. I noticed how he moved with quiet confidence, aware of every step, and felt a strange reassurance in simply following him. It was a rhythm we had fallen into, a silent understanding that we would navigate each turn together, each step a reflection of trust and shared experience. Halfway up the hill, we paused. The town stretched out below us, rooftops and streets glowing softly in the afternoon light, framed by distant hills and a sky painted in muted blues and golds. He turned to me, eyes reflecting the same quiet thoughtfulness I had come to recognize. "I wanted you to see this," he said, and I understood that it wasn't just about the view. It was about the effort, the shared journey, the act of showing me something he valued. That I took a deep breath and felt the wind brush my face, a gentle, calming presence. The quiet beauty of the landscape reminded me of how often we rush through life without noticing the moments that truly matter. Here, on this hill, everything seemed to slow. Every color, every sound, every sensation was amplified, as though the world itself had paused to allow us to fully inhabit it. We sat on a large, flat rock at the hilltop, legs dangling over the edge, and fell into a comfortable silence. I found myself watching him more closely than usual, noticing the small details, the way his hands rested lightly on his knees, the way his eyes scanned the horizon, the subtle tension in his posture that relaxed only when he caught my gaze. There was something profoundly reassuring in the steadiness of his presence, a reminder that connection doesn't always need to be loud or obvious. Sometimes it is quiet, patient, and enduring. Eventually, our conversation drifted toward our dreams, the ones we had allowed ourselves to nurture quietly over the years. He spoke of hopes that had seemed too fragile to pursue, of ideas that had lingered at the edges of his mind. I shared mine as well, the ones I had tucked away, the ones I had believed were long forgotten. There was no judgment, no need to impress or compete, just a simple, heartfelt exchange that deepened the sense of intimacy between us. As the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the hill, he reached over and lightly touched my hand. It was a brief gesture, unassuming, yet it carried with it the weight of understanding, respect, and shared experience. I did not pull away. Instead, I felt the warmth of his presence settle into me, a reminder of the quiet power of companionship, of being seen and acknowledged in ways that matter more than words can express. We remained on the hill until the first stars began to appear, tiny points of light in the deepening sky. The air cooled, carrying the faint scent of evening and distant flowers. I realized that in the span of a few walks, a few hours, we had created something rare, a space of trust, discovery, and mutual respect that would endure far beyond the moments themselves. It was not a romance in the conventional sense, not a grand gesture, but a connection grounded in authenticity, care, and presence. As we began the descent back toward the town, I felt a sense of closure, of completeness, that surprised me. The walks had taken us to hidden groves, reflective rivers, and quiet hilltops, yet the true journey had been inward, a path toward understanding, reflection, and emotional growth. I looked at him, and for a moment, no words were needed. Our shared gaze said everything. By the time we reached the base of the hill, darkness had fully settled, but the quiet glow of streetlights and distant windows made the familiar streets feel gentle and welcoming. I realized that the memory of these walks, of this connection, would stay with me, a reminder that life's most profound experiences often come in unexpected forms, quietly waiting for those willing to notice. He said goodbye with that same soft smile, the one that had guided me through discovery, reflection, and trust. As I watched him walk away, I understood that the simplest invitation, a walk, had led to something far more significant than I could have imagined. I felt a sense of gratitude and awe, recognizing that the moments we share with others, when approached with openness and respect, can leave lasting imprints on our hearts, shaping how we see the world and ourselves. And so, as I returned home, the evening air brushing against my face, I carried with me the quiet knowledge that life, in all its ordinary beauty, is most extraordinary when shared, when noticed, and when approached with an open heart. The walks had ended, but their lessons would remain, a testament to connection, presence, and the gentle power of human understanding that transforms the simple act of walking into a memory to be cherished for years to come.